So I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'm not going to tell you yet what makes these questions have some commonality, but we'll get to that. I want to say welcome to this meeting. I recognize that there's a lot going on with our strategic planning process, and there's a lot of different moving parts, a lot of groups doing different things, and so I thought it would be good to have a meeting like this just to help everybody understand what's going on and to understand how you might become involved as well if you'd like to. So that's our goals today. But before I begin, I want to say a few words just about strategic planning in general. And I think that the why of strategic planning is very simple, but the how is the complicated part. How comfortable is everybody with English? Should I repeat a little bit in Spanish, or is okay? English okay? Yeah. Okay. So the why for strategic planning I see as relatively simple. And it comes back to, going the wrong way. It comes back to some of these questions. Some of these questions that have been percolating in our community. The first one, should we implement the IB program? We began talking about that last year. But we said last year we really need to get the community's input on is this something that's right for ACS or not? Some things that are going on, another question that's been very common here, should we open the campus more broadly to the community? Should we change CWW? Should we renovate some of our facilities? Should we invest in certain academic programs? These kinds of questions are the kinds of questions that we could give an answer to, but that's not what's most healthy for the school. We want to pull from the school whether the answers to these questions are the ones that our community wants. And that's really what the strategic planning process will give us. It'll confirm our values and what our mission is, what our vision is, and set a plan for achieving that vision. And it should answer, if it's a good one, if we succeed in making a useful strategic plan, it should be able to answer these types of questions very easily for us, but answer it in a way that's consistent with what our community has together decided. So that's what our goal is in the end. Why strategic plan? We want to answer these kinds of questions for us, for our community, and answer them in a way that has buy-in from our whole community. The how is the complicated part. And why is it complicated? Well, all of our community has busy lives outside the school, and yet we need to try to get the opinions and ideas and thoughts from as big of a swath of our community as we possibly can. So that's the challenge of the how. So there's some different phases in a strategic planning process. First off, the planning here is really planning to plan. How do we want to structure what we're going to do? And I'm going to tell you about some of the structures that we've put into place today. And then it's analyzing what our current context is like. Reaffirming our purpose to make sure we're all in agreement with what we're trying to do, our mission, our vision. And then creating actions that we're going to take to get where we want to go. And then in the end, monitoring whether we're actually doing what we said we're going to do. So, again, this is going to be a relatively short session. So I'm going to try to give you an overview of the structures that we've put in place and a little bit of the why, and hopefully leave time for a few questions as well. So we've designed a process that will essentially take us most of this semester to complete. And we're hoping that in August, the board will be in a position to have a strategic plan that they could approve or want some changes with. But that's the idea, to take the semester to really draw out of the community what's important. One of the first steps is we'll want to understand our current context in some of the areas that are important to the school. Now, the very first, most important area of the school is the academics area, and we've got a group that is beginning work on analyzing the academics. We've got some start on this as well. We've got even some work that has been done in the past that we'll use to inform that work going forward. But we've got a team that will start working in all of these areas: academics, governance, facilities, finance, human resources. And we've got teams that will be reaching out to the community for people that would like to be involved. So if you see one of these that you would be particularly interested in being involved in, you'll see in the next month, in February, you'll see some calls go out for participation in these particular teams. The idea of this is to really understand where we're at now first. That's their first step. Then you may be aware that we have a steering committee for the strategic planning that has been working for the last couple months. This steering committee, their first task is really taking a hard look at our mission, vision, and values, and then working with the community to get input on whether those are still appropriate or whether we want to add additional themes or redo those mission, vision, and values to include a set of themes that hopefully will emerge from the community. They are right now getting ready to conduct some focus groups. They've designed a way to conduct those focus groups, and we've got 7 different groups planned with different stakeholders: parents of ES, parents of secondary, students of secondary. We've got teachers of both divisions and various groups totaling 7, staff as well. And so we've got this set up. The group felt, interestingly, that it was important not to just get the people that come when you invite a group in, but rather to randomize the members of our community and make an effort to reach out and encourage the people that come up randomly first to be a part of these focus groups, so that we don't just get people that normally have time to be involved, but we get people that might not normally come in to get a more broad and representative idea of what's happening in our community. So that process, those groups are forming now, and we'll be sending out, in the next 2 weeks, we'll be sending out invitations for that. So if you do get an invitation for one of those, recognize that yours has been randomly selected, and if you can at all make that, it would be great, because we want to try to get as much participation as we can in those. Of course, if you can't, we'll go on to the next person in the list.
By invitation?
That one is going to be by invitation to particular people, because we're going to take the whole list of parents, essentially, and randomize the order and call the first one and move on down and invite them in that order. If somebody can't make it, of course, we'll replace them with the next one. Yeah.
Sorry, if there is a parent that feels really compelled and interested in one of those focus groups, can they, even though they are not randomly selected, can they ask to apply?
I think, I have to actually, to get that answer, I almost need to ask the steering committee, because they came up with this randomized process.
Who's in the steering committee?
Yes.
So we have. Oh boy, I don't have the list, but we have parents, teachers, board members, students. Only high school students, but we've got pretty much 4 of each of those areas.
And they were all elected randomly, or?
So they all, we sent out a call for that in, I think, maybe November. And then we took in people, but we wanted to keep that even, between parents, students, teachers, and so on. So we had to select within those categories by who applied first, essentially, but within those categories. And then, so let me say the second part there. So the idea with those focus groups is to bring out themes that are important for the community, and then the steering committee will distill down some of those themes and send them back out as a survey to the entire community once we've identified them, to have the community prioritize which areas that everyone feels is important. I just want to take a moment with these questions again and emphasize how those themes might impact what we do. For instance, and I'm not, actually none of these, well, in some, a couple groups, a couple of these themes have come up, but they're, these are not the actual theme, these are just examples. Let's imagine internationalism and our rigorous academics came up. Well, if I look down that list on the left of questions, the IB might be an obvious choice if that was a theme that came out of our work with the community. If you go down, maybe less important, the opening of the community with that one. The CWW, maybe its focus shifts a little bit to support this type of thing. If we were renovating something, maybe the library comes first with this kind of a theme. On the other hand, another thing that's been mentioned is Bolivian culture and our unique community here at ACS. If that came up to be the prominent theme and not the first one, maybe the IB isn't the preferred route, but maybe the opening of the community becomes very important. Maybe what we invest in renovating, there's been a lot of talk about maybe the cafeteria could actually be a hub of community activity. Maybe that becomes a priority if this came up. You can imagine if we had STEM as a priority, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Maybe the robotics comes to the top over there. Sports, maybe the playing fields and the gym become more important. So these themes do have the power to drive what we're doing throughout the school, and should drive what we're doing throughout the school. In many ways, completely, one main difference between a nonprofit organization like our school and a for-profit organization is a for-profit organization has a very easy mandate. It says you make more profit, so you do things to bring in more money, or make things more efficient, or have less expenses. That's easy in some ways. For a nonprofit organization, the thing that gives us our marching orders is the mission and vision. And so depending on what that says, we need to make decisions consistent with it. One problem I see with our current mission and vision is it's very vague. For instance, our vision talks about excellence. But you can imagine that different people view excellence in very different ways. In fact, all these different things, you could say, we could have excellence in sports, we could have it in STEM, we could have it in internationalism, but if you try to be excellent at everything, you often end up being excellent at nothing. So we need a mission that has the power to drive our decision-making all across the school. After the work on the mission, vision, and values, both of these strands will come together to work on actions associated with how do we get from where we are now. We've analyzed where our context is, what's going on right now, how we get from there to where we want to go, and actually making concrete plans. There'll be two steps to that. All of those groups, our members from all those groups that I mentioned before, will be invited together to begin work on what are the main, big, high-level strategic priorities for the entire school. And once those are determined, those will become part of the strategic plan also. And we hope that we can, or at least we're on track so far to get this completed and approved by, thought is it would be approved in the August board meeting if everything goes as we expect. And that would end the strategic plan, but it wouldn't end the work that we're doing based on the strategic plan. So I want to cycle back a little bit, that those same teams would then begin developing more detailed action plans to realize the strategic plan. We actually have, of course, most of the people that we hire in the school have expertise in academics, and so we're well suited to do the work in figuring out how we get from where we are to where we want to be on the academic side. The governance side, the board will examine its own work. I'm going to jump down to finance and human resources for a moment. Finance, again, we've got people in the finance office to work on that, and human resources in a similar way. One area that there's been some talk about that we don't have a lot of in-house expertise in is related to the facilities. Our facilities team is very adept at maintaining the school and making small repairs and doing things that need to be done. But as far as projecting what the school should be in the future and thinking about where we work on renovating spaces and where we work on expanding things, that will require some additional expertise. So again, this is after the strategic plan. So after the strategic plan, these teams would begin working, and in particular in this facilities area, we would want to look at how we plan for the facilities going forward, developing a campus plan or a master plan, it's sometimes called. And I want to talk a little bit about that process because we introduced the idea of a master plan back in the General Assembly, but I think we have a lot of pictures of how master planning is done elsewhere, and I want to emphasize that if we're to do this here, we would have a hybrid approach that uses the expertise in our community and not just draw from the outside. But let me just say why that's important and how it connects to the most important part of what we do, which is the academics. And I'm going to do that through an example. So these, classroom A over here and classroom B, these are both classrooms that I've taught in. One of them is a giant lecture hall at the University of Washington. The other is I'll tell you about this one in just a moment. But there's a photo there, showing the seats there, not unlike our auditorium. And you can see in the front there's, there's 12 blackboards there, and so you'd write on one, and then there's a huge long stick, and you'd raise it up to the top, and you can fill a huge amount of material in the front of the room there. This room, and you're probably very accustomed to that. This room is very different. This room is still a fairly large room. There's 11 tables there. Each of them have 9 students around them, and the students were grouped into groups of 3. And they had all kinds of, there's computers in a little drawer there, there's equipment. I taught physics, so there's all kinds of physics equipment in these cupboards, and each one's got a screen, and I could in the front, move the, send different things to different parts of the room on the screens. Both of these, in both these classrooms, I taught introductory physics. But it's interesting, and I want to show, this is really, really old data at this point, but this is about 10,000 students in this data set. This was done way back in 1989. But they showed that these red courses were traditional courses, and the ones that were kind of yellow or green are what they said were interactive engagement courses. And they actually used that definition pretty loosely so they could categorize lots of different, instruction that was going on at lots of different institutions in these 2 different ways. If it was mainly teacher-directed, like in a lecture hall, it was in the red side. If it involved students interacting with one another, it was more on the interactive engagement side. And you can see the achievement is dramatically different in these groups. So then that kind of takes you back to these pictures. And if you think about what it's like being a student in these two different rooms, and you think about whether there's interactive engagement or not, over here on the left, you know, I tried to engage the students with one another in this big lecture hall. You can say things like, you know, turn to the person next to you and you know, discuss this topic. Or maybe, you know, the four of you, you know, the two in the back row, you know, lean over and talk to the two people in front of you. But it's hard. The classroom works against you. Whereas in this kind of environment, the classroom works with you to do what we know is good for students. So I just want to use that as a little example from my personal experience, how the classroom and the built environment actually either supports or hinders what we're trying to do in the classroom. And it's interesting, we went on a walk around the school looking at facilities and talking to teachers, and we saw some of this same kind of things in our own school that you know, we don't have many of these, well, we have one theater, but we don't teach classes in it. So I mean, we don't have these giant lecture halls. But what we do have in a lot of rooms are old desks that are very, very heavy and were intended to sort of be in rows with the teacher up there lecturing and not much engagement, interactive engagement happening between the students. And so what we see in a lot of our classrooms is teachers are fighting against that, trying to put the desks together and get students collaborating in ways that we know are good, but the room's kind of working against them. And so that's another example of how some renovation might really affect or impact our ability to deliver quality education. I just want to mention you know, some other variables that you often think don't have anything to do with the education. They just make students feel, you know, better. Things like you know, the lighting, the acoustics, the CO2 levels, and the temperature in rooms. But they've actually done some studies. Unfortunately, I don't have the graphs for that one with me, but they've done some studies that these factors, if you're attentive to these factors, they can actually have a dramatic impact on performance in the classroom as well. And you can imagine, even, you know, for yourself, if you're sitting in a hot room with the sun beating down on the back of your neck, you're probably less engaged in what's going on in the classroom than if some of that's been taken care of. So it's important that we look at some of these kinds of things, not for just to make the campus look nice, but rather because it impacts student learning. So again, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this. Is again after the strategic plan. It's in parallel with what we're doing with the academic team, but it's looking at our facilities and thinking not just today, not just tomorrow, but out for the next decade. What should we do and when, and in what order? And that comes from those priorities that our community has identified. We can set up that kind of order and do this. So the first step is to really, you know, analyze those existing conditions. Like I said, we're starting a little bit of that already. We've got some input already on the existing conditions of our facilities. Many of you know that we've done extensive work on the pipes, essentially, in this part of the campus and in the central part of the campus. And so, you know, we discovered through some surveys that through surveys from professionals on the hydraulics of the water in the campus, that there were problems that were being caused by the water problem that even affected the integrity of our buildings. We had some cracks forming in floors and ceilings, but it was because the overflow in some of the pipes were causing the subsidence in the pillars in the school, and we needed to get that fixed. So that's actually part of why we instituted the capital fee and why we've got those ongoing projects. So similarly, we need to analyze, you know, what the current condition is of our school, both with regard to things like that, but also with regard to the light and the temperature and the CO2 levels and other parts of the school. Some of that we certainly think that we can have done locally. Some of it we might need to get expertise from elsewhere, but I think it's something that we be very careful about and only go to outside expertise where we really need it and can't get it locally. We also want to benchmark what we're doing based on other American international schools around the world. Because, things like our science labs and so on, do they have the right configuration? Do they have the right amount of space? Do they have the right amount of equipment? If you look at many of our labs, you'll notice that some of them, it's been a long time since they've been worked on in this way. And so, but since our labs were built, there's been a lot of progress in what we understand about how students learn best in a science lab, and we want to make sure to take that into account before we would do anything to them. Then in the end, we would create a plan that would be a plan that says, what areas need work, the general ideas that are going to be needed to renovate those areas, and how they go and in what order. And I want to comment a couple things about a few things that have been hurting us because we lacked a plan. This water issue that I was talking about, in many ways, the water issue came up because we didn't have a thorough master plan for how we would renovate our campus. And so there were some decisions made at different times. One was to add some bathrooms to some of the primary classes, and it made sense. It was easy. You could just push out the wall and create some bathrooms. This happened maybe a decade ago. But because of the extra water and extra that put into the system, it's caused some of these problems that we've had. Another problem was, at some point, the municipality was allowed to let some of the drainage from the street come into our system. That, again, added more pressure to the water that was coming on our campus and has caused some of these problems. And because we did this in kind of an ad hoc and piecemeal way, we've run into the problems that we've gotten. We've had this big expense. If we've got a plan to begin with, we can use our money more efficiently. Same thing's true of, I don't know how much time anybody spent on the level below the theater in the building over here, but that area was once, when the building was built, it was intended as a very, very large room with areas for teachers' desks and for work centers and other things. Yeah?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Please.
Is there more, or can you start asking a few questions?
Let me see, I think I've got...
I was listening to a lot
Yeah.
of infrastructure things